Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Two topics I want to get to in this segment. The first is to close the loop on this 100-page autopsy. That's what they called it. They called it an autopsy. And don't forget, the Republicans won governorships and state houses all over the fruited plain. I think the Republican Party is now in complete control of the governor's mansion and the state legislatures in 27 states. On a state level, 2012 was an enormously successful year for the Republican Party. It was a disaster on the federal level. But let's not exaggerate here. Yeah, we don't want to repeat that, and we can avoid that by running a genuinely conservative candidate the next time. And you just get this sense that, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be up to us. I mean, it's going to have to be up to us, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to have to insist that the party give us a conservative candidate to back. We're going to have to insist on that. It's going to be up to us. Nobody's going to do it for us. We're going to have to be informed when the time comes. We have got to weigh in, and we've got to bang on our pots and pans and make enough noise that they will give us a conservative candidate because we insist on it. But I want to close the loop on this autopsy. Here's a piece from Breitbart. The Republican National Committee's internal evaluators argued that true conservatism loses the Republican Party elections. There's a 100-page report on page 54. This is a piece by Matthew Boyle. On page 54 of the report, authors Henry Barber, Sally Bradshaw, Ari Fleischer, Zori Fonolatus, and Glenn McCall argued that true conservatism hurts the Republican Party in elections. Quote, third-party groups that promote purity are hurting our electoral prospects. Who are these third-party groups that are promoting purity? Well, it's the Tea Party. They are promoting purity when it comes to the Constitution. It's pro-life groups that are promoting purity when it comes to the sanctity of human life. It's pro-family groups like AFA that are promoting purity when it comes to the sanctity of marriage. And they are saying, look, they are not saying that these groups are assets to the Republican Party and to the cause. They are liabilities. They are making it more difficult for us to win elections. And they say this in this Wizards of Smart report: we need to remain America's conservative alternative to big government, redistribution to extremes, liberalism. Now, I'm struck by that phraseology. We've got to be the alternative to redistribution to extremes, liberalism. I mean, do you get my point here? I mean, this is the Republican Party, the Republican National Committee, saying we are not opposed to redistribution of wealth. We're not opposed to socialism in principle. We just think it's gone too far. We just don't want redistribution to extremes. So they're basically saying, yeah, you know, as long as it's a moderate amount of redistribution of wealth, we are just A-OK with that. And we need to build a route into our party that a non-traditional Republican will want to travel. So what's a non-traditional Republican? Well, I don't know what that is. But you assume that they want to throw out the welcome mat for people to call themselves Republican and believe in the validity of abortion, call themselves Republicans and believe in marriage that's based on the infamous crime against nature. And they say our standard should not be universal purity. It should be a more welcoming conservatism. By the way, I've got a column up at Instant Analysis today on that whole topic of what libertarianism means to the future of the Republican Party and how contrary it is to the view of the founders. Don't forget that John Adams says our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. It is made exclusively only for a moral and religious people. You throw the word moral in there to a libertarian, he starts seeing red. That means you're trying to tell me what to do. You can't do that. So again, my point is that the founders were not libertarians, not on social issues. Now, they were libertarians on economic issues, and I believe that's what we ought to be. We ought to be libertarians on economic issues, but we must not be libertarian on social issues. There, we are to be socially conservative. So this, let's see. Here's another excerpt from the report that I thought was objectionable in terms of reaching the youth. And don't forget, the youth don't stay youth forever. They're going to grow up. I mean, it's just silly to me. This is just so backwards, where you have the GOP adjusting its entire agenda, its entire platform, based on the beliefs of the least experienced, least mature, least wise people in the movement. Why would you do that? It's idiotic to do that. But that's what they want to do. In terms of reaching the youth, committee states that, quote, already there is a generational difference within the conservative movement about issues involving the treatment and the rights of gays. And for many younger voters, these issues are a gateway into whether the party is a place to be. So what they're saying, hey, if you don't go gay marriage, you're going to lose the youth vote forever. But ladies and gentlemen, they don't stay young forever. They're obviously naive. They're poorly taught. They do not understand the consequences of same-sex marriage for America's health. They don't understand the consequences of same-sex marriage for America's children. We know what happens to children that grow up in same-sex households. You don't want that for vulnerable kids. So you and I know that because we're educated on this stuff. These party poobahs are oblivious to that. They apparently don't even care about what happens to kids in same-sex households. They're just going to throw the door open because that's what we got to do to get the youth vote. They don't need to be pandered to. They need to be educated. We don't pander to the least mature, least intelligent, least informed, least experienced, least educated members of our movement. We educate them. We open their eyes. We give them information. For the GOP to appeal to younger voters, we do not have to agree on every issue, but we do need to make sure young people do not see the party as totally intolerant of alternative points of view. Now, I want you to think for a minute just about how moronic that is, that they think this is a winning message, that our goal is to make sure that young people do not see the party as totally intolerant. So in other words, our goal, apparently, the only way to parse that is our goal is to make sure that people see that we are only partially intolerant. We're not completely intolerant. We're just selectively intolerant. We're intolerant, absolutely, but not on everything. It's to think that this is a winning message. You're going to sell that? You're going to send the representatives of your party out to sell that as a message? Hey, vote for us. We are not totally intolerant. I don't know what this is. The stupidity here is kind of exceptional. And here's a piece, the GOP roadmap calling for immigration reform. Again, I remind you that Marco Rubio gave a huge speech, well received at CPAC, did not say a word about immigration because he knows that amnesty is anathema with the grassroots. And it's simply suicide for the Republican Party. We've talked about this before, but the Pew Research Center, 75% of Hispanics believe in big government. That's what they want. For a lot of them, that's why they immigrated to the United States. They believe in big government programs, big government benefits, and they came to America because America's richer than the land they came from. They can get more goodies here. That's why they're here. And 71% of them vote Democratic in the last election. So if you got 75% of them want bigger government, and yet only 71% of them voted for the Democrat, the Republicans picked up 4 points they shouldn't have ever gotten. So it's just silly. And if you legalize, you give amnesty to 12 million illegal aliens, the studies I've seen, the most conservative estimate is that the Democrats will pick up 2.2 million lifelong voters net. I mean, the Republicans will get some of that because you got 29% voted for the Republican guy. So, yeah, the Republicans will get some of those illegal, alien, newly christened voters. But the vast majority are going to go to the Democratic Party, and it's going to be a permanent advantage of 2.2. You can't give away 2.2 million votes and expect to succeed. So this whole thing just strikes me as just complete Looney Tunes. Scott Walker, whom I really liked until I read this, he was asked on Meet the Press yesterday whether younger conservatives are more apt to see marriage equality as something that's what they believe, that is basic rather than as a disqualifying issue. I think there's no doubt about that, Walker said, but I think that's all the more reason when I talk about things, I talk about the economic and fiscal crises in our state and our country. That's what people want to resonate about. They don't want to get focused on those issues. So Scott Walker is saying we ought to check out of the whole values debate. We're gone. We're out of here. We don't want to talk about same-sex marriage. We don't want to talk about the homosexual agenda. We don't want to talk about the consequences on human health. We don't want to talk about the consequences on the nation's blood supply. We don't want to talk about the consequences in our education system when homosexuality is normalized and is going to be taught, indoctrinated in our schools as normal. We don't want to talk about the impact on kids growing up in same-sex households. We just want to check out of the values debate altogether. And Scott Walker was a guy that I really, really liked. Now, I want to shift gears just for a second before we bring our guest in at the bottom of the hour. I'm shifting gears completely here, but I want to set up our next guest. Because what's going on in Cyprus is a huge, huge thing. I had wanted to devote more time to it than I was able to. But what's going on in Cyprus right now is a huge, huge deal, and it has implications for you and for me. What they're doing in Cyprus is without any legal authorization whatsoever. The government is going in and taking 10% of people's savings accounts. They're going into their bank accounts, and they're slicing 10% right off the top. They're not asking permission. They didn't get a vote on it. It's not been authorized by anybody. They just went in there and took it. 7% if you were below a certain threshold. They just confiscated the money. And ladies and gentlemen, if they can do it in Cyprus, they can do it here. We'll talk about that after the break. Focal Point AFR Talk.